Yes.
Excellent. Thanks, Didier, and Jean-Pierre and ATHS for allowing me to be here. And I'm very honored to be the one giving this talk, since there are people in the room who are working day to day at the site in Ho Chi Minh City. Cécile Denis has done most of the data analysis, but she's a little busy at the moment and couldn't be here for the meeting. But as you can see, this is another project that has many collaborators that often turns out to be one of the barriers to implementation, but in this case, I think it's been the solution to many of the implementation issues that have arisen. The project is funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and Chuck O'Brien is the PI of this project. We're in our third year now. We have a 5-year project, so we'll finish in 2017. The Suboxone, the buprenorphine, and naloxone was donated to the research by Recca Bengheiser, which is now managed by Indinovir. So I really want to be very quick and use my 22 minutes to give you a clear picture of the aims of the study and a very brief overview of the concepts that informed the research, and then conclude with the data on the current status and the results that we've seen so far. So the aims are, this is not a randomized controlled trial. This is a study of implementation. And our goal was to establish a new integrated medication-assisted treatment program with both methadone and Suboxone within an HIV clinic in Ho Chi Minh City. The clinic is the GoVAP clinic. And the purpose of the research is really to understand the issues of implementation, to identify the barriers and facilitators for the implementation of this, type of integrated treatment program, and to measure the retention of patients and the adherence to the treatments, as well as drug use and HIV treatment engagement. And by the end of the study, we hope to have some cost-benefit analysis of the various approaches to treatment. So, as I mentioned, this study was informed by some currently, I think, very important concepts. One is that HIV treatment and the suppression of virus is prevention of the transmission of HIV infection. This was the study that provided confirmation of that concept, HPTN 052. We also have a large amount of research that shows that methadone maintenance treatment improves access to HIV care, it improves adherence to HIV care, and it improves a drug user's ability to suppress their virus. Despite all of this evidence of the good qualities and the good outcomes of methadone treatment, globally, the access to treatment is severely limited. And in most countries, even advanced countries, it's rare to have more than 10% of people who need treatment actually in treatment. In Vietnam, these numbers are a couple of years old now, and Dr. Zhang sort of gave us a much brighter picture of the number of people in treatment in Vietnam, which is very good to see. But again, there's a real opportunity in Vietnam to learn perhaps from the mistakes of other countries in terms of expanding access to substance abuse treatment. And And our project is really built around the concept of addiction as a chronic medical condition that has both biological components and behavioral components, and that the most effective response, the most effective approach to treatment requires attention to both the biological and the behavioral through medication and, very importantly, through counseling. I do a lot of work throughout Asia, and I have been struck by the fact that that methadone treatment has been introduced as a harm reduction strategy and has become primarily a medication distribution system. And in our program, we actually want to emphasize the addiction treatment, which requires more than just the distribution of medication. It requires counseling. We also have recently finished a study, the HPTN finished a study in China demonstrating that Suboxone was both safe and effective at reducing HIV risk among injection drug users. It was well accepted and well tolerated among 1,250 injectors. As has already been mentioned, Vietnam is a good laboratory for developing these treatment strategies. It's a good collaborator, and both the methadone treatment system or the drug treatment system and the HIV care system are both currently being scaled up. So it's a good opportunity to explore different strategies for how to achieve success. This is a picture of the GOVAP clinic with Jean-Pierre going into this clinic, you can see. In the bottom, you can also see where the project started in the smaller, more well-used clinic. So we're fortunate now to be in a location that has adequate space for counseling and medication administration. So in terms of the procedures, the key inclusion criteria for being part of the study were, of course, being over 18 years of age and being meeting criteria for the DSM-5 for an opioid use disorder. Of course, the patients had to be interested in either methadone maintenance or Suboxone because our project was introducing Suboxone into the same setting. And we wanted injectors, a high-risk population, so individuals had to have injected within the past 30 days by self-report. Our medication dosing strategy was, as has been mentioned before, is consistent with the policy across Vietnam, which is daily dosing with no take-home medications allowed. And Suboxone, after 4 weeks of stable dosing on a daily basis, patients are allowed to transition to a 3 times a week dosing schedule. We think this is very important because it actually has some future advantage in terms of the efficiency of expanding drug treatment in Vietnam and in other places. Currently, there are about half of the patients that are on Suboxone are on a 3 days per week schedule. Now, our counseling strategy is rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy and in this approach, our emphasis is on current drug use and related problems. This is not a broadly focused counseling, it's not family counseling, and it's not counseling that has a psychodynamic philosophy. We're interested in what's going on today in your life and how are you going to get through tomorrow without using drugs and coming back to take your medication. So the focus is on establishing short-term goals that help the patient to achieve success in avoiding drug use. And this includes the establishment of some behavioral contracts or basically homework assignments so that when people are away from the clinic, they actually have specific behavioral goals that they're working on. It also incorporates the concept that relapse is part of the recovery process, and it should be anticipated, and we should build in strategies for managing relapse when it does happen. And finally, our secret weapon was the supervision and support that Augustin Visson provides via Skype on a very regular basis to help the counselors deal with challenging issues, but also to keep them focused on the philosophy of the counseling. We're developing, and we're almost finished with taking these concepts and putting it into a user-friendly toolkit that helps the counselor to stay focused on the important issues of recovery, where we structure the approach to the topics that are discussed with the patient in order of priority. First, are you taking your medication, both your HIV medication and your addiction medication? Because if you're not taking your medication, why are we here? Why are you in treatment? So the first and most important thing is to take your medicine. Then, have you used drugs? If you haven't used drugs, have you had cravings? When do you have cravings? And the counseling is designed to develop strategies to help the person deal with these problems as they arrive. So this toolkit will help us to not only help the counselors within the GoVAP clinic to stay focused and stay on track, but it will help when it comes time to expand this to other clinics and to share this strategy with other treatment programs. In the first year, we spent most of our time getting local, national, and institutional administrative and ethics approvals. We did a lot of training in the first year and the second year, and we were able to begin treatment with methadone in the second year. It took a little longer to get all of the paperwork approved for the importation of Suboxone, but this was the first time Suboxone was legally imported into Vietnam. And we were able to begin, Jean-Pierre delivered the first dose of Suboxone in Vietnam in February of this year. From the very beginning, when we began enrollment in methadone, the rate of enrollment was quite strong and steady and has continued. This represents the first approximately 14 months of the study, the chart here. We now have 315 patients in treatment. There's actually more patients. This was as of August of this year, the data that I'm reporting on. 232 of those patients are on methadone, and 83 patients are now, or were in August, receiving Suboxone. I believe that's now 98 patients. And of all the patients who came to enter the program, 89.6% were eligible. There were a few who did not meet criteria for addiction or who were, for other reasons, not eligible for enrollment. Most of the patients are male and have an average age of about 32 years. 81% are living with their parents or other family members, and about half are working at various types of jobs. At baseline, everyone obviously was using opioids, but everyone was injecting heroin, and presumably nearly every day of the month, 28 days out of the month. And other drug use, tobacco, 100% of the patients that we've enrolled are smokers of tobacco, which is another future opportunity for intervention for us. About 18% were drinking alcohol, and benzodiazepine use, amphetamine use, and marijuana use were actually reported at rather low levels. In terms of the baseline HIV prevalence and HCV prevalence, 32% were HIV positive, and we identified 3% of our patients of these HIV positives were newly diagnosed by our tests at entry into the program. All of those patients have been able to be connected to HIV treatment. 95% were already affiliated with an HIV clinic, which does not mean that they were receiving antiretroviral medications, presumably because of CD4 counts being above 350 in most cases. And only about half had suppressed virus. So again, a real opportunity to have an impact on viral suppression here. With hepatitis C, 66% were determined to be HCV positive, and 33% of these were new diagnoses. And only 2% had received the ribavirin and interferon treatment that is available in Vietnam at the moment. In terms of retention rates thus far, 92% have been retained in treatment for 6 months and 12 months. But the 12-month data only includes our methadone patients because we've only recently introduced Suboxone. And as you can see at the bottom of this slide, in comparison, we are seeing a lower retention rate at this point with the Suboxone patients. And that's an issue that we're working with the physicians in the clinic to understand better and to modify our dosing strategy. In terms of adherence to the medication, we've had very high rates of medication adherence. Very few people do not show up for their methadone or their Suboxone doses. And this is among the highest rate of counseling session attendance that we've seen in any of our research anywhere. 92 to 97% is the range of sessions that have been attended. So very few missed counseling sessions as well. A real tribute to the staff at the GoVap clinic. And all of the HIV positive patients, as I said, have been able to be enrolled in HIV care. I think the next challenge in that regard is making sure that everyone has access to the antiretroviral medications. In terms of opiate-positive drug use, the yellow bars represent the percent of or the prevalence of opiate use detected by month, and by the 6th month, only 20% of the tests are positive for opiates. And in terms of the blue line here, that represents the average number of days per week that are reported. So significant reductions over time in both the Suboxone and the methadone group. And in terms of the number of days of heroin use, there's no difference between the methadone and the Suboxone groups as well. So in conclusion, I think our current data, and I want to emphasize current because we're still in the midst of implementing this study, it supports that this approach is both acceptable and feasible regarding the integration of methadone treatment within an HIV clinic, including structured behavioral and drug risk counseling. We've had rapid enrollment and high retention rates. We've been able to introduce Suboxone with the support of many people in Ho Chi Minh City and in the Ministry of Health in Hanoi. It seems to be acceptable to most patients. People are showing up at the clinic and asking for Suboxone. The word is out. The media has reported on our introduction of Suboxone, and the response of the community, of families and patients has been quite positive. And we've had, as I mentioned earlier, a few patient management concerns regarding dosing and response to missed visits that we're working on. The integrated treatment strategy has shown significant positive impact on drug use, on detecting previously undetected HIV cases and improving access to HIV care. Next year we'll be able to talk about viral load and suppression of virus over the course of a year of treatment. And the research will be used to confirm the long-term stability of these findings and to specifically identify the factors that facilitate and impede implementation. But for sure right now, I know that the strongest facilitator of implementation is the team and the teamwork. And so this is the first conclusion that I want to emphasize, is that we have a really great team and a cooperative team. And although there are many organizations involved in this study, we're able to identify issues and solve them and still keep smiling, as you can see. There are many people. This is not even a complete list, but I definitely want to thank Chuck O'Brien for making all of this possible. And although Cecile's not here, I told you she was unable to attend. This is why she was unable to attend. It's Leopold's fault that she's not here. So, thank you very much.
Il est 16h28, donc on doit terminer à 16h30, donc ça veut dire qu'on a encore un quart d'heure, j'ai bien compris. Moi, je voudrais, avant de vous laisser poser des questions, confirmer que l'équipe marche bien. On n'est pas dans l'équipe, mais on les côtoie régulièrement et ça marche très très bien au Vietnam. Deuxièmement, je voulais dire, j'étais un peu étonné par le niveau de CD4 des patients qui sont inclus, 432 à la baseline. Alors, est-ce qu'il y a des patients qui prennent déjà des antirétroviraux avant de rentrer dans le programme, ou est-ce que, en critère d'inclusion, il faut être naïf d'antirétroviraux? Et dans ce cas-là, comment avez-vous fait pour démarrer les ARD, puisqu'à l'époque du programme, le seuil était 350? Et puis un dernier commentaire, moi je travaillais aussi donc dans la même ville, à Ho Chi Minh Ville, dans l'hôpital tuberculose. Et je voulais vous remercier parce que j'ai eu à m'occuper d'un patient de Govap avec une méningite tuberculeuse. Et c'est clairement pas la même chose pour nous, cliniciens, de prendre en charge un patient avec une tuberculose sous méthadone et sous Suboxone. Donc merci pour les cliniciens aussi.
As for the CD4 count, you know, that was the average CD4. So there were patients below 350 who were not on medication. There were some that were above who were not on medication. There were some who were on medication. I don't have the data to present here as to the precise rate of medication among that group. But it's something that we monitor closely. I just don't have the data on these slides. Now, maybe there are, maybe Ms. Son knows the answer to some of these questions, or Vincent, or others. Yes?
Thank you, David, for an excellent presentation, a very exciting study. I know that you started with methadone first, and wonder when later on, when patients enroll, can they choose either methadone or Suboxone, or how do they assign either medication?
Yeah. Well, at this point, we switched everyone. All the new patients starting in February were offered Suboxone. It was not our original plan, but it took much longer for us to import the Suboxone, and it was the most feasible strategy that we could use. Now, there are still some patients who choose methadone, and we're allowing that. Or some people have switched from Suboxone to methadone. And this is really, actually, in my opinion, one of the more important outcomes of the study will be trying to provide some guidelines on which approach to treatment, which medication is best for which person. Right now, there's no such guidelines in existence anywhere in the world. So this is a real opportunity to make a contribution. There are suggestions, and there are other places that have approaches that they're using, but this will give us some basis, you know, for making some recommendations on how to assign the medication.
For patients on TB treatment, I have a suggestion.
Yeah. Okay.
Going back to the issue about CD4 count, I think that it also show that the really entry into drug treatment is really an important gateway for ART treatment,
Yeah.
Earlier initiation of ART.
Yeah.
I mean, many people, the drug user, they really first care about the drug treatment, right? And before they even know about their HIV status. And that's, I think, is a very important entry point. The other more difficult is that those who found out that they are HIV positive, how do they, once initiated with ART, how do they get into drug treatment? Is that hopefully that there would be some, the integration model will open up that possibility for them.
Yeah.
D'autres questions?
Of course.
David, thank you very much for this impressive study also, because I remember some years ago, I mean, you were just starting, and I'm really happy, and I give you my congratulations for conducting this important study that I think will have important repercussions on access to care for people who use drugs. My question is, because just you showed the retention rates, do you have any idea about the average dosage prescribed of methadone and buprenorphine, of Suboxone, sorry, in the two groups? Because maybe this may make the difference.
Between the two groups?
I mean, methadone, which is the average dosage? And
the average dose, I think, is somewhere around 90 milligrams for methadone.
And for Suboxone? And
for Suboxone, it's probably 20 milligrams per day, average.
So
Jean-Pierre, you?
Okay.
I should say that Jean-Pierre has not only trained...
I know Patricia understands very well French, so I will answer her in French. Nous avons démarré avec des doses assez élevées, avec plus de 20 mg en moyenne, et avec des taux de rétention qui étaient excellents. Nous avons observé que dans les derniers mois, notre prescriptrice de Suboxone a eu tendance à baisser le dosage de buprenorphine. Et on a justement une réunion de travail là-dessus pour essayer de corriger. Et ce qu'on a pu observer sans avoir analysé tous les datas, c'est que sur les patients initialement induits, selon les bonnes pratiques, puisqu'on sait que pour être à équivalence de rétention avec la méthadone, contrairement à la méthadone, la buprenorphine doit être induite rapidement et à un dosage efficace, c'est-à-dire une haute dose. Non, c'est la dose correcte, mais les doses correctes sont entre 16 et 32 mg dans la littérature. Donc, là, on a observé dans la deuxième partie, dans les 2-3 derniers mois, une baisse de la rétention liée probablement à des pratiques de prescription qui doivent être revues et ajustées pour revenir aux bons résultats initiaux. Voilà. You're welcome.
Si on n'a pas d'autres questions, moi je voulais juste, avant de donner la parole au président de la séance, M. Raguin, encore une fois remercier. C'est une des premières fois, c'est même pour l'équipe du Nord, pour Drive-In, la première fois qu'on présente les résultats. Ils étaient très heureux de pouvoir le faire à Biarritz, où donc ces projets ont démarré, enfin la conception, le début de la conception. Donc encore une fois, merci. C'est pas de la démagogie. Peut-être certains, enfin la plupart me connaissent pas, mais je suis pas connu pour ça. Donc merci Jean-Pierre. On est là parce que vous êtes là vous aussi. Donc on espère revenir dans 2 ans pour vous présenter des résultats plus avancés. Donc on va peut-être donner la parole à Gilles. Moi, excuse-moi, juste avant, sur les 2 projets quand même, dire que ce soit à Ho Chi Minh Ville ou que ce soit à Haiphong, on va vraiment être devant un problème extrêmement sérieux d'hépatite C, parce que les chiffres sont 2/3 des patients sont des usagers de drogue, sont infectés par l'hépatite C, avec un premier calcul d'incidence au-delà de 30% d'incidence de nouveaux patients à Haiphong, et ça doit sans doute être la même chose au sud. Donc je crois que ça va être, dans les jours, semaines, mois qui viennent, vraiment quelque chose auquel il faut que le Vietnam s'attelle et s'approprie et travaille et que les choses changent.
Merci Didier. Donc quelques mots de conclusion. Vous avez vu d'abord enfin, pour ce qui me concerne, comme l'a rappelé Didier, ça fait un certain temps, de nombreuses années que je fréquente le Vietnam, et je crois qu'il y a quand même des choses tout à fait, des améliorations tout à fait spectaculaires qui nous ont été montrées, aussi bien en termes de couverture par les antirétroviraux, mais aussi, on vient de le voir assez longuement, en matière d'accès aux soins en général et au traitement de substitution. Je pense qu'il faut le souligner, et ce n'est pas simplement quantitatif. On a vu qu'il y avait de gros efforts pour que cet accès soit aussi, que l'amélioration soit aussi qualitative, et je salue de ce point de vue-là ce qui a été un peu évoqué finalement ce matin dans une session, c'est-à-dire la recherche communautaire, parce que ce qui est fait à travers les groupes d'autosupport, ça rejoint tout à fait, et d'ailleurs probablement il faut faire le lien entre les deux et avoir une doctrine sur cette question au Vietnam comme ailleurs. C'est l'apport considérable de la recherche communautaire. Et par ailleurs, sur le plan qualitatif, je pense que la présentation de Dave METZGER, mais je crois que c'est encore plus patent quand on est sur le terrain et qu'on voit le programme, la valeur ajoutée tout à fait considérable du counseling dans la façon dont le programme intégré d'accès au traitement de substitution fonctionne aujourd'hui sur le terrain à Ho Chi Minh Ville. Et j'espère que ce modèle fera l'objet d'un passage à l'échelle dans les années qui vont venir au Vietnam, parce que je pense qu'il est extrêmement intéressant et démonstratif. Alors évidemment, tout ça, on se félicite de ces excellents résultats. Il faut aussi, je crois, pointer la suite, ce qu'il reste à faire. Et de ce point de vue-là, évidemment, l'hépatite C sort avec des signaux d'alarme et des flashs d'alarme importants, parce que c'est un sujet considérable, pas seulement au Vietnam, bien entendu, mais enfin là, on voit bien que c'est le cas. On a vu aussi, parce que ça a été évoqué dans d'autres séances, mais il faut qu'on arrive aussi à faire un peu de transversalité, parce que le tabac, c'est quand même quelque chose au Vietnam comme dans d'autres endroits qui est important. Et moi, je suis très préoccupé par l'alcoolisme de l'équipe. On a vu qu'il y avait beaucoup de vin rouge sur la table, sur la dernière photo qui a été montrée sur le diaporama. Et là aussi, je crois qu'il faut faire quelque chose. Donc voilà, donc c'est quelques mots de conclusion pour saluer ces résultats, les mettre en perspective, hein, rien n'est jamais parfait, et du côté de l'hépatite C, on voit bien qu'il faudrait assez vite, je pense, à la lueur des innovations thérapeutiques récentes, qu'on réfléchisse tous ensemble. Je sais que c'est déjà le cas, mais il faut peut-être aller un petit peu plus vite, puisque l'innovation accélère considérablement aujourd'hui les possibilités d'accès au traitement. Et ce serait tout à fait passionnant de pouvoir mettre en place des programmes intégrés dans lesquels on s'occupe aussi de l'hépatite C, de l'addiction au tabac et de l'alcoolisme. Il faut être ambitieux. Voilà, merci à tous en tout cas pour ces remarquables présentations et merci à vous pour votre attention et votre intérêt.